Lesley, it's easily done, it's just a small change to a piece of legislation, so we'll have a Tesco tax. Views?
Well, that's, that sounds like quite a good one, and it's, I like the way you fitted it in with the bids team and so on. The retrospective nature of it sounds a little bit difficult to maybe measure, as in how do you measure decline of a town market? What's your indicators?
Well, the indicators, Lesley, would be the closures, void rates within the town centre. With every supermarket, you're going to get an element of trade diversion, that's accepted. The issue is whether or not it's going to be significant, and the retail impact assessment will actually dictate what that level of significance is, and generally be a percentage of voids increase over the period. Now, my suggestion is that if that voids increase within the town centre is actually greater than what has been anticipated, then you could put together a formula within a planning agreement that said, right, that shows that there's been a far greater impact, adverse impact than anticipated. You're now going to have to pay for that
one
to be
thing
reversed through monies that would be allowed to
there was a very interesting, I think Channel 4 did a survey on this, and Dundee is the most supermarketed town in Europe. The speculation was that there might not even be much more supermarket growth in Scotland because we already have such a high degree of supermarketisation that growth is looking more likely to happen in England. And I mean, if this is where we are, then trying somehow to extract value out of supermarkets and give it effectively to a development team who might have different ideas about what could be done with it sounds good. I still wonder why we're in that situation of being so dependent on the one big. It's like, this little country has a belief that big is beautiful, and it comes back to my general mantra, which is small is beautiful. And it's as if this country is so still lacking in self-esteem that we look to catch the passing stallion. We look to sort of see what is coming past us that looks big. And if it's Tesco, if it's whatever, then we just lie down, waggle our legs in the air a wee bit. Now, that's got to go. And the only concern I have slightly about that is, as an approach, I know you're taking, robbing from Peter to try and pay Paul, but I just wonder if somehow we need to have an approach that doesn't sort of begin to look first at the centres and perhaps even just have a presumption against any further supermarkets.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious of time, actually. I'll just ask Ian to chip in a minute.
I think the trouble with retail impact assessments is that they look town-wide. If they can claim that there's a hinterland of shoppers within X miles, they tend to say that therefore the town as a whole is going to claw back trade that's currently leaking out further afield to a different town, and therefore what they're really doing is looking at the town as a whole and saying, well, it's fine. Individually some stores might close, but as a whole the town's fine. Difficulty with that is that nobody is doing what you're suggesting and looking at the high street level, store by store, as to what's closed, what diversity has gone, what kind of uniqueness has gone, what quality of jobs how that's changed, because impact assessments are done at a point in time. You're quite right, nobody goes back and monitors to see if they did what they said on the tin when they were put forward by the promoters. Other difficulty is that some of the local authorities don't have the skill sets, let alone the resources, to really plough in to be able to assess impact assessments at the required level to really seriously see whether or not they're robust in their own format. So there's no monitoring going on of any useful level. But beyond all that, and I think this is perhaps closer to where Lesley may be coming from, is the issue that there's a kind of assumption here which is set out in our legislation beyond planning through kind of competition, and it's perhaps going back to competition commission type work, that the assumption is that if we can drive the price down of goods that we buy, convenience goods, to you and I as shoppers, then that's the good for the economy. We're not looking at the impact of that stance. In Germany, it's actually legislated that it's illegal for supermarket type retailers, large format retailers, to sell goods below the cost of production. And yet over here, the Competition Commission has found that it happens. Not in a terribly huge way in terms of the total turnover of the supermarket. You'll be pleased to hear, well, that's pretty big. So if it happens just for a time, just long enough to kill off the competition in a particular town, it's long enough and it's done the damage. And of course, the query I'd have about at what point does this monitoring occur? A, you need it to be done on a regular basis at a high street store level. But I'd be a canny supermarket operator by just saying, right, well, perhaps this new legislation says we've got to monitor for 5 years to see if I've had this detrimental effect on the high street. So at year 6, that's when I really go to town and I try and broaden out my offer. And then he's going to enforce that. He's going to check that actually I've introduced other products and narrowed my aisles and perhaps broadened it out. It becomes a policing issue and it becomes a resource issue. So I think it's a great idea, but as usual, I can imagine the lawyers have a real heyday with it. So, any lawyers in the audience?
Yes, me. I would respond to that by saying that if you get the contract right at the outset, if there's an appropriate degree of rigour applied, then that contract can be made to work. And yes, there is expertise out there that can assist the bids if and when they were looking to put a contract of that type in place. And you could put, as a matter of contract, you could put in it whatever you want. And it doesn't need to be 5 years or whatever you do, 3 years. And you make sure that there's a condition in their consent that restricts them to certain types of goods and certain types of floor space. Now we know there are issues surrounding enforceability, but with a proper goodwill and indeed a level of resource in terms of development control, you can do it. You can do it.
That's sensitive, mate. I'm going to let Sandy and Ian discuss that one over coffee. I'm afraid we're out of time. I'm very conscious of people want to ask questions and lots more we could debate, but I'm already over time. So I'm going to wind up there.
You get too many mics on here.
Too many
that's the
mics.
problem.
So that has a good chance to break. I just want to say some thanks, first of all, to the sponsors. So thank you, sponsors. Thank you to Ian and Lesley, who I think have been fantastic. We've certainly had no shortage of ideas coming out. Before I let you go, and before we thank Ian and Lesley properly, somebody was saying, so who are these white-shirted CSPP army? Well, they're the interns. So over the break that you had, please look around the display, but please also take the chance to say hello. Give them a chance. Don't just go and talk to somebody you already know. Go and talk to one of the interns, please. So
the guy in the front's really worried about wearing a white shirt here now.
Good point. So see if you can figure out which ones the interns are. That's part of your challenge. For me, that's been a really interesting debate. The one thing I'm going to take away is people. People in the capacity that we already have, that we can do this and we need to play them into regenerating our towns. And before we actually all get headaches, can we thank properly Lesley and Ian for a fascinating discussion?